Hey guys, and welcome back to another RPG Maker MV plugin. Today's plugin is another addition to the Timed Attack series, the Mash Timed Attack. Simply mash the OK button or tap the screen as fast as you can to bring up the bar. The more you tap, the higher it will go. If you reach the top before the time runs out, the Timed Attack power will be at maximum. On the other hand, if it hits the bottom before the time runs out, the Timed Attack power will be 0. But if the time runs out before it hits either side, the Timed Attack power will be a ratio based off of how much the gauge is filled up. Anyway, like with the other timed attacks, this requires the timed attack core. Install the plugin underneath it. Then use the note tags timed attack mash and end timed attack to make the skill use the mash timed attack. And finally, like with the other timed attacks, this one has multiple properties you can manipulate for each individual timed attack. They're all listed in the parameters, so let's go learn what each one does. Normal sound effect. Determines the sound effect played when the time runs out and the bar is somewhere in the middle. Simply input the file name of a sound effect. By default, it is set to Sword 2. Success sound effect. This is the same as a normal sound effect, only this is a sound effect plays when the bar becomes completely filled. By default, it is set to Bell 3. Fail sound effect. This is the third sound effect that can be played. It plays when the bar becomes completely empty. By default, it's Buzzer 1. Smooth mode. This determines whether the bar will increase smoothly or have a rough increase animation. Either input true or false. By default, it's set to true. Phrase. This is what appears above the bar. Simply input a word or phrase that you wish to appear. Use %1 to represent where the amount of seconds will appear. By default, it's set to mash %1. Start amount. This is the amount of points that the gauge starts with at the beginning of the timed attack. By default, it's 1000. Max amount. This is the total amount of points that it takes to fill up the gauge. By default, it's 2000. Seconds. This is the amount of seconds the player has to complete the timed attack. Input a small number such as 5 or 10. By default, it's 5. Speed. This is how many points the gauge loses every frame. Once again, you want to set this to a low number. By default, it's 5. Tap gain. This is the amount of points gained every time the player presses the OK button or taps the screen. If you're using smooth mode, set this to a low number such as 15. But if you're not using smooth mode, set this to something higher like 100. Width. This is the width of the gauge. By default, it's 200. Height. This is the height of the gauge. By default, it's 12. Above height. This is how high above the actor the gauge appears during the timed attack. By default, it's 150. Color 1 and Color 2. These allow you to customize the two colors of the gauge. By default, these are both set to the hex color 33CCFF. Flash rate and flash time. These allow you to manipulate the ending flash animation like with every other timed attack. Now let's actually make some of our own mash timed attacks. For example, let's set the phrase to time remaining %1, let's set the max amount to 3000, and let's set the seconds to 10. Now we have a different phrase that appears, and we have to put in some extra work to fill this bar up to 100%. Now let's try setting color 2 to whatever this thing is, and let's set width to 300. And now, the visual aspects of this gauge has been slightly changed. And that's all for this plugin. The download link to this plugin is in the description of this video. Give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more epic timed attacks in the future, such as next week's timed attack arrows. Press the arrows in the right directions before the time runs out. If you don't, then something bad will happen. I promise. Also, be sure to check out my Patreon if you wish to help support more of these awesome plugins and videos. And that's all for now. Until next time.